Are you still thinking that Austin and downtown living is the pinnacle of Texas luxury? Not anymore. That's not what these buyers are looking for at this point. They're opting for land, they're opting for privacy, and they're opting for legacy. And the buyers that I'm dealing with, I'm sure they're a lot like you. They've spent decades building their business, building their companies, making smart acquisitions, getting rid of things when it didn't make sense, and trusting themselves to know that what they were building was the right thing and it was going to be the right thing for them and their family in the long term. And so now what they're doing is they're getting ready to trade that decades of building something like that for building a legacy property, something where they can get away from that neighbor, get away from that, quarter-acre lot, half-acre lot, and be able to walk out onto their patio in the morning with that cup of coffee and just look and not see anything but wildlife and views. And when these buyers start to change that mindset, start to shift from building the legacy of a business into building the legacy of where they're going to spend the rest of their life, the homes that they're looking for really do not exist inside of Austin. They're out in the Texas Hill Country. And what they're looking for at this point is an estate that is basically their own resort and not just an end of a cul-de-sac house. And you can put yourself in their shoes pretty easily. Just imagine for a second, it's the end of the day, the sun's starting to get low, and grab a glass of whiskey, a cigar, maybe a glass of wine, and you just walk on your property. You're watching nature and you're watching the sunset and you're not listening to traffic. Now contrast that with going for a walk on your treadmill in a game room, or walking down to the end of your driveway to check the mail and having to see all your neighbors pass by and hear all the cars and everything else. Luxury's changed. And from that perspective, I've lived in Austin for a long time now, and there's still luxury properties there, and there's some people that choose to live in those, but it's changing. You look at what a luxury property is in Austin. Maybe you can get a half acre. If you're really lucky, you find something on an acre. You might be able to find something waterfront, but contrast that with what we're finding in the Hill Country, what I'm helping people buy: 50 acres, 100 acres, 500 acres, 1,000, a couple of thousand. The only limit is your imagination and where you want to be and what you want that property to look like. And the best example of this is Hidden Valley Ranch. This is a property that's on the market right now. This place is incredible. It's basically your own county. 3,290 acres. It's got multiple residences, horse barns, staff quarters, and the best thing about it for me is there are miles and miles of live water on this property, flowing streams, flowing creeks, things that, you actually want to go and take a walk beside, your own private paradise. And the thing that really changes here is the scale. In Austin, we're talking about that small piece of property versus what you can get out in the Hill Country. And you go, when you're looking at this, you're going from being a homeowner to being a steward. Again, I go back to legacy a lot when we're talking about properties like this, and being able to take a piece of property and form it into something that can be passed down to generation after generation within your family. So you're no longer a homeowner when you're out here on a place like this. You're a steward of the land. The second thing that really changes out here is, what do those lifestyle amenities look like? In Austin, luxury properties, you're going to have big windows. You might have some views of downtown. You're going to have designer kitchens and designer bathrooms. You might have a swimming pool. And that's the luxury that you're getting in Austin. That really nice soapstone countertop with waterfall edges. There's your luxury. But when we start talking about the Hill Country, sure, you can have all those things. No problem at all. You can find somebody to put them in if they don't exist. But beyond that, what do you get? Okay, you get guest casitas. You may get a compound. You may have 3 or 4 residences on one property for your whole family or all of your friends. The next thing I'm starting to see people put in are wellness retreats. And again, some of these are corporate, and maybe a CEO has this large property and he's putting in a wellness retreat for his corporation, but also horse barns, building separate spas with saunas and things like that, next to their swimming pools. And then beyond that, again, what do you want? What you can build is limitless. Do you need a driving range? Do you want to put in a golf course? Have at it. The other thing I'm starting to see more of now is lazy rivers. I've seen 3 or 4 of them now, and heck, the owner of Bucky's built one on his place just on the southwest side of Austin. So again, it's the luxury amenities. You don't need the gym to go to. You can build whatever you want on your property, and you're even closer than you would have been in Austin if you had to drive 15 minutes through traffic to get there. And the thing is, these aren't extras. These are lifestyle anchors at this point, and it's redefining what's possible and what doesn't exist in most people's heads. And at this point, I mean, it may sound intriguing to you to have all of this property, right? But what a lot of people get overwhelmed with, they're like, well, how the heck do I maintain 100 acres? Because in town, you've got to maintain your lot. Well, out here, this is what maintaining 100 acres looks like. You don't. If it rains, it's green. You could have somebody shred it. You could put in some cows. You could put in some goats. You could put in some horses. But this is what maintaining 100 acres looks like right here. Now, if you want a park-like setting, sure, you would have to maintain it, but I think you could find some people to help you out with that. But what it really looks like is managing your irrigation, right? Where are you going to use your water? Probably going to be close to the house, and if you have animals, where the animals are. It looks like taking care of fencing, because at some point your fence is going to get knocked down, whether it's a cow or an ice storm, but you're going to have to manage that. It definitely looks like managing wildlife. You're going to have skunks, you're going to have big snakes, you're going to have big scorpions, you're going to have big tarantulas. You're also going to have the cool stuff. You're going to get to watch fox and rabbits and deer and owls and all the fun ones, right? So managing 100 acres also includes managing wildlife. But the biggest thing is that you are landscaping on a scale that you never imagined in Austin or in any other city for that matter. When it's time to take that next 5 acres and clear out all the cedar trees and open up the oak trees like this, that's a landscape project. That's fun. But the coolest thing about it is when you're doing it and you're opening up new views and you're opening up new things on your property, what you start to realize is that you're curating something. Again, it's going back to that legacy and being a steward. You're building something. You're watching this vision come to life. And don't get too terrified of it, because there's ranch managers, there are arborists that can help you with this. A lot of this work can be hired out, and then you do what you want to do. One weekend, if you want to grab your chainsaw and go spend 8 hours on the end of it and just work yourself to death so that you can sit down and enjoy that beer later that evening, go for it. But if the next weekend you need to have a group of people out there clearing it for you with big machinery and getting way more done way faster than you ever could, that's okay too. And hopefully that puts you a little more at ease with, what does it look like to maintain that property? It's daunting, but the thing is you've got time. Hopefully that puts you at ease a little bit with that major question everybody always has about, how to maintain the property. It can be daunting, but it's also a lot of fun, and you've got time to do it. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow. Now, another question a lot of people have about, moving out into the hill country is, they worry about schools and they worry about healthcare. Let's talk about schools first. You've got some of the best ranking schools in the entire state in the Texas Hill Country. I mean, just a few. You've got Lake Travis, you've got Dripping Springs, you've got Wimberley, Fredericksburg, Leander. Those are all great school districts. And that's not even starting to go down towards San Antonio with Kerrville and Bernie and those school districts over there. So if you're looking for good schools, you can still get out into the Hill Country and have those great schools. And then the other one is healthcare. Just about every one of even the small Hill Country communities now has emergency care, but larger hospitals. You have them in Burnett, you've got them in Marble Falls, you've got a pretty big regional one in Fredericksburg, you've got a major hospital in Kerrville, and all of those places are within an hour to Austin or San Antonio, so you have availability of health care. Your specialist might be a little bit further out, but you can plan those in advance. You may have to go into Austin or into San Antonio for a specialist, but just for your normal care, you're likely going to have a hospital within 30 or 45 minutes. And then going back to, what about your daily basis? What are you going to do for your shopping and things? Every one of these communities at this point has a grocery store. It's either a Lowe's grocery store with, Hill Country grocery store. They're smaller, but they have everything that you need. And then you're also going to have H-E-B in most of your major towns. Fredericksburg's got an H-E-B, Wimberley, Dripping Springs, Lake Travis, Lakeway, that area. And then again, Burnett and that whole area through there, Liberty Hill, you've got grocery stores galore. So, even your day-to-day necessities, really, it's not very difficult to get to. One of the other questions I get a lot is talking about technology. At this point, I think most people know Starlink it has really revolutionized internet, but even beyond that, a lot of the areas out here, if they don't have fiber internet, they still have high speed. You know, I've got DSL and it works completely fine. I never have downtime, or very rarely have downtime, and our internet is solved for. So you don't have to worry about connectivity. Yep, if you get into some areas, your cell phone connection can get a little bit sketchy, but there's boosters and stuff for that now as well. And if you've been around long enough, you know, you heard during Snowmageddon a couple of years ago that a lot of the hill country was down for a while with, with power outages and stuff. But what we're seeing more now, especially when you're talking about these luxury properties, we're seeing battery walls, Tesla battery walls in. We've got whole house generators that are propane runs. So, you know, you put a 500 or 1,000 gallon propane tank in and you can run your house for a long time with electricity. And, you know, there's always a question also about water and water availability. I have a rainwater collection and have never had an issue with running out of water. I don't have a yard. I don't irrigate a yard. I do have a small garden, you know, tomatoes and stuff like that that I do irrigate. But, you know, rainwater collection is really becoming very popular out here, and most people have some type of backup. They'll have rainwater collection and they will have a well or even multiple wells if you're talking a property that's several hundred acres. So again, the questions that I get that people are scared about really have taken care of themselves, and people know now that it's not daunting. Another one is septic systems. You know, they don't know about septic systems, and what I've got to tell people is, you know, there's companies that manage them for you. You know, they'll come out a couple times a year, just take a look, you know, make sure everything's working okay. If it's not working okay, they'll let you know. But managing a septic system is really not much different than having a in-house sewer, right? You know, you got to be a little bit more careful about what you flush down the toilet. And I guess in the city you should too, but, you know, if your kid flushes a toy down the toilet, you know, it's the city's problem at that point. And so if you get a toy flushed down the toilet with a septic system, it could become your problem if it clogs up the septic system. But again, it's really not that much different. You don't put quite as many things in the garbage disposal as you would in town. But again, that's something that's pretty easy to figure out fairly quickly. Another thing that we like to talk about, you know, and going back to the beginning of this when I talked about how you built your business, you built your company, you built your livelihood. You want to make sure that your investments are solid, right? So a question that I get a lot is based around, hey, you know, how do I make sure I'm not buying at the top of the market, or how do I ensure that I'm buying in an area that I think is going to be a good investment? Because at the end of the day, even though this could be and it may very well be a legacy property for you, you never know what is going to come down the road in 5 or 10 years, or what you may have to do. So you always want to make a purchase with a sale in mind, right? Just in case that's what needs to happen in the future. But let's talk about that investment for a second. You know, again, what are you getting for your money? In Austin, I saw recently there's a penthouse that sold for $13 million. So what do you get for that kind of money in the Texas Hill Country? This is a great example of it right here. The Falkenstein Castle, 14,000 square feet on 110 acres. And yeah, it also comes with guest cottages as well. And if you want to up the budget a little bit more, take a look at Three Creeks Ranch. $42.5 million, but what does it get you? Now, it'll cost you $42.5 million, but what do you get for that? 886 acres, exotic wildlife all over the place, native wildlife as well. You've got stock ponds everywhere, absolutely beautiful. Tennis courts, wine cellars. This is true Texas luxury. So when you go back to how safe is your investment, Austin, you can buy that same penthouse over and over, right? If it doesn't exist right now, somebody else is going to build another high rise and there's going to be another penthouse. But in the Hill Country, what you're getting is scarcity and what you're getting is permanence. Okay, when you're buying a ranch like Three Creeks Ranch, okay, that's not going anywhere. That property is going to be just as valuable tomorrow as it is today. Now, I want to mention something that to me is the ultimate luxury piece of buying in the Texas Hill Country, and that's not having to deal with HOAs, not having to deal with restrictions, not having to deal with your neighbors, you know, oh, your grass isn't cut the right height, oh, you left your trash cans out too long. Okay, that's the kind of luxury I can get behind. And yes, like I mentioned, you're going to have to deal with septic, you're going to have to deal with wells, you're going to have to deal with some rural permitting, but You're not having to deal with anybody telling you what you can and can't build. Architectural control committees, unless you're in something like Boot Ranch or something like that in Fredericksburg, be your kids if you want to include them on those decisions. But yeah, the architectural control committee is you and your architect. Now, the hill country is not a great match for everybody. Look, if you're worried about being seen, if you're worried about impressing people with a watch or a pair of shoes or something like that, the hill country luxury lifestyle might not be for you. Out here, we're talking about stargazing out on your patio. We're talking about setting up private wine tastings for you and a couple of your friends, at one of the wineries in Fredericksburg. We're talking about going out to the stock pond or the creek or the river with your kids or your grandkids and just sitting down on a Sunday afternoon and enjoying life and fishing. Luxury out here is not really a status symbol, it's a sanctuary. My smartest buyers right now are having to ask themselves, and look, there's nothing wrong with a luxury home in Austin, but they have to ask themselves, am I wanting luxury that I can show off? Am I wanting something that has the flash of downtown Austin, or am I looking for something that's got a little bit more permanence? And my buyers are definitely asking about that legacy piece. What's going to be here after I'm gone? What am I going to leave to my kids and my grandkids? What are they going to talk about in 30 or 40 years? Are they going to be sitting in a downtown Austin hotel, talking about, oh, I remember Grandpa, he used to take me, out to eat at this restaurant? Or are they going to be sitting out on the patio that you built, sitting around that fire that you used to roast marshmallows with as kids, and talking about, man, look at what Grandpa and Grandma left me, and just being able to share that with their friends and their family and their kids at that point. So the legacy thing is probably one of the biggest parts about this move. And again, it goes back to, the home. The home is whatever. You can build the same home in 50 different locations around the world. Doesn't matter if it's in Austin. If you like that style of house, buy that house, build it on a piece of property. And if you're thinking about this move or a move like this, it's not about the home, right? You can get the home in Austin. It's the lifestyle that being out here unlocks for you. That's the true magic of it. And if you've got any other questions about a move like this, or you want a second set of eyes on a property, or you want somebody to bounce ideas off of, that's what I'm here for. My name's Chris. I'm a realtor here in Dripping Springs, just outside of Austin. And this is what I do. I work the Texas Hill Country and help people realize the legacy.